Hello, we are going to be leaving England soon and heading for the new land across the ocean. We are people who wanted to worship our own way. We first moved to Holland for 10 years, but now it's time to leave the continent. We are in debt to investors who are funding our voyage.
The Mayflower should have left England in spring in time for the passengers to build homes and plant crops before winter. Their journey was delayed several times. In August, the Mayflower departed England with another ship, the Speedwell.
The Speedwell was leaking and the ships had to return to England twice. Finally, the Speedwell was abandoned and the extra passengers, minus half of the supplies, board the Mayflower. September 1620, the overcrowded Mayflower left for its journey to the New World.
I'm a sailor that has been working on the Mayflower, a cargo ship, for a few years now. We store goods in the lower part of the ship called the hold. There is no place for passengers. I was quite surprised to learn that we are transporting a large group of them to the New World. They are going to stay on the gun deck. It is where we have cannons in case of pirates and ammunition. It is one large room with no privacy. There are no windows and it is cold and damp. The ceiling is only 5 feet high and a person can't stand up tall in it.
The orange line was the way the pilgrims wanted to go. The black dots was where they went. They went from there to there to there.
The company funding our voyage expected our ship to land near an existing colony 200 miles south of where we landed. There, we would have received supplies and help. Instead, the storms blew the Mayflower off course, and it was too stormy to travel further south.
A mast on the ship broke in half, but we were able to fix it.
Leaving England so late in the year meant we ended up crossing the Atlantic during terrible storms. Most of the passengers were so seasick they couldn't even make it up to the deck for some fresh air.
I am the Mayflower's cat. I have a very important job of killing the rats on the ship. Rat urine carries a terrible disease. There is also 2 dogs on the ship, but I am doing all the work.
We eat dried meat and fish and mealy biscuits called hardtack.
When it is calm enough to cook, we have porridge and beans.
We drink beer because the water is contaminated.
People were throwing up from seasicknesses, and for 2 months, nobody took a bath. It's so stinky in this room.
It is so crowded where we are staying, and we don't always get along.
Sometimes the only fresh air we get is when we go on deck and to empty the slop bucket.
The Mayflower wasn't built for the open sea and our journey is moving slowly. We can't let the passengers on the open deck very often because they get in the way of our work.
Hello, my name is Beaks the Birdie. For as long as I can be remembered, the native people have lived in harmony with the land. We had space and food for all the animals and people to survive. Tall ships have been coming over the years and they have taken away the resources and the native people. They left the seas behind. I see a new ship coming. I don't know what to expect for our future.
The Mayflower anchored at Cape Cod November 11th. Late December, they moved to the harbor area originally settled by the Patchwicks people. The English called it Plymouth. Only 41 of the passengers on Mayflower were there for religious reasons. The rest were merchants, craftsmen, indentured servants, and orphaned children. Before leaving the ship at Cape Cod, it was decided a contract was needed to establish rules to live by for the good of the colony. They formed a way to govern themselves by a majority rule. They agreed to work together, be loyal to England, and to be Christians. This was later called the Mayflower Compact.
It is the beginning of winter, and a ship full of people just landed where there once was a thriving village of native people. Trade ships have landed here before. They kidnapped some of our people and took resources such as timber, fish, and furs. After they left, the entire village died of a bleeding sickness.
I see this new group of people from the big ship are planning to stay. They are building homes where the village once was. They look happy to discover that there are logs to build houses with, and the land has already been cleared for crops.
45 of the 102 passengers on the Mayflower died our first winter in the new land. I'm one of the 4 women that survived. Many of the children lived. We gave them what little food we had. We tried to keep them warm. Our friends and family died of malnutrition, sickness, and cold.
The settlers are all dying. I see them being buried on a small hill. I don't think they can survive the harsh winter and lack of nutritious food. Only a miracle can save them now.
The men and boys left the ship and started building homes. It was slow, hard work. Snow and ice covered the grounds. It wasn't until March that the settlers could move in.
In March, the Pilgrims were greeted in English by Samoset of the Abenaki tribe. Samoset lived 5 days north and had learned English from fishermen who traveled to his area. He was meeting with the Wabanok tribe.
He introduced the settlers to Squantum and Chief Massasoit.
We need to make a decision. Do we help these settlers and form an alliance, or do we let them perish?
They have brought so many children. I think this group is different than the traders and fishermen before. I think they plan to live here. They can help us against warring tribes, and we can teach them how to live here.
With so many native people dying, other tribes were able to take over their villages. There had always been warfare between the different native nations.
So Chief Massasoit made a treaty with the settlers to work together and to protect each other.
Tisquantum stayed with the settlers and taught them how to hunt fish and trap game.
They learned how to collect shellfish, berries, and eggs.
He taught them how to plant and prepare local crops like corn, squash, and beans.
The food on the new land was not like the food that they ate in England.
Tisquantum was kidnapped and sold to the monks in Spain. He later ended up on an English ship.
Several years after he was kidnapped, Tisquantum escaped from the ship when it docked in the region of the Abenaki tribe.
He made his way back to the Packstrip village to learn all 2,000 of his people had died of disease. Then he went to live with the Wampanoag people.
The harvest of 1621 was especially important to the settlers because they had survived a year in the new land.
The Pilgrims and the native people each had their own spiritual beliefs. Giving thanks was a way of life for both groups.
A feast was attended by 90 Wampanoag men, including Chief Massasoit.
The Wabanok brought venison meat of 5 deer. They were still much better hunters and trappers than the settlers.
The feast also included fish and seafood.
The Pilgrim women, children, and indentured servants prepared dishes using local plants, especially corn.
Some of the settler and Wabanok men and boys played sport-like games.
There is very little information on the number of indigenous people living in the eastern coastal region of the New World before fishermen, traders, merchants, and settlers arrived. It is estimated to be several 100,000.
Early on, after Europeans arrived, entire tribes were annihilated from disease, slave trade, wars, and hardship.
As the number of European settlers increased, most of the remaining indigenous people were relocated west of the Mississippi River.
It is estimated that tens of thousands of Americans today are descendants of the native eastern coastal tribes.
Today, 400 years after the Mayflower Journey, about 35 million people worldwide can trace their ancestry back to the Mayflower. About 10 million of these people live in the United States.